So what happens if you're considered GBS positive? This is not a sexually transmitted infection. This doesn't mean you have a dirty vagina. Hey everyone, my name's Lavonne and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am going to talk about something today that you can absolutely expect to experience in your pregnancy. I'm gonna show you how the GBS test is done. I got my models here, and then I'm also gonna discuss why we test for GBS and what impact it may have on your pregnancy and particularly your labor and birth if you are positive. What is GBS? GBS stands for Group Beta Strep bacteria. Basically, it is a normal, natural bacteria that lives in your vagina and your rectum. And in general, it doesn't really do much. Sometimes it can cause an infection throughout your pregnancy and other times of your life, but in general, it's sort of considered one of our normal flora bacteria. If you know anything about the microbiome, this is really what we're talking about. There's various places in our body, in fact, everywhere in our body, there exists bacteria, and bacteria got a bad name. In general, bacteria can cause harm, but there's also good bacteria, right? This is why we take probiotics. This is why we care about the flora of our body, right? Our skin has natural good bacteria and our vaginas have natural bacteria, and that helps keep your vagina healthy, right? We want it not with infection, and we also don't want a yeast infection. If you've ever had one of those, that is no fun. And so throughout your pregnancy, and sometimes even early on in pregnancy, they will test for group beta strep bacteria in your vagina and rectum. Now, they're gonna test this around 35 to 37 weeks of pregnancy. So if you're anticipating that time, your doctor's visit, your midwife visit, this test will be done. And what we found is that by testing, or what we call universal screening, meaning this is not discriminatory, this is like everybody gets this test around 35 to 37 weeks, it has helped decrease infection rates by 57%. So you're gonna get tested. I'm gonna show you that test in a second. Now, why do we care? Because we know that in about 20 to 25% of people, they are going to have this type of bacteria, which would mean that your test comes back positive. And so when you get to the hospital, one of the questions your nurses, I promise you, are gonna ask, and if they don't, please volunteer this information, is are you GBS positive or are you negative? And if you're negative, all is well, cool, noted, moving on. But if you're positive, what we need to do is actually treat you during your labor and birth. All right, and by treating, which I'll talk about in a second, we've found that it actually has decreased our infection rates or the complications by over 50%. And I'll give you some more numbers in a second, okay? So this is really important. It's universal, expect it, and it's gonna be helpful to know whether you're GBS positive or negative, and then I'm gonna give you some tips if you can prevent it or not, because it's kind of a hassle in labor and birth. So what happens if you're considered GBS positive? And again, about 20 to 25% of you will be. This is not a sexually transmitted infection. This doesn't mean you have a dirty vagina, all right? This just means that you have this one type of bacteria that, if present in your vagina, can cause your baby to become very, very sick. Now, baby goes through the vagina, or even if you have a scheduled C-section, if your water breaks, that bacteria that's in the vagina can naturally creep up into the fluid surrounding baby and can make baby very sick. Therefore, you need treatment. And so what happens if you're GBS positive is you will get to the hospital, whenever you get to the hospital, and ideally they're gonna start an IV and then they're gonna give you antibiotics. The antibiotic of choice is penicillin or Pen-G. Now, what happens if you're allergic to Pen-G or penicillin and the group of penicillins? Okay, there's Ancef that we can give, there's other antibiotics, but we do need to know if you have that allergy, but otherwise you don't. They're gonna give you IV antibiotics every 4 hours. Now, what we find is that when you're given antibiotics, there is a 5-fold decrease of infection and potentially your baby getting super duper sick if it's given within 2 hours of birth. So you get to the hospital, you get your antibiotics, and then from the time of antibiotics given to birth is at least 2 hours, there's 5-fold more chance of your baby not getting sick from this GBS, all right? And we're talking like really sick, like NICU sick, okay? Now, not everybody is gonna get sick, but we wanna help prevent your baby from getting sick from this bacteria, right? Now, if you wait that 4 hours, which is sort of like the golden the golden time frame, right? From first dose to second dose at the 4-hour mark, there is a 50-fold decrease in potentially your baby getting sick, all right? So that 4 hours is great. 2 hours, we'll take it. If you're gonna give birth, obviously we can't slow that down. It goes really fast. Great, we're happy for you. And then they'll monitor your baby and make sure your baby doesn't have signs of being sick or infected. But really that 4-hour mark is the goal. Now, if you get to the 6-hour mark, meaning you've had 2 doses of antibiotics and it's been 6 hours from your first dose, you have nearly 1,000-fold decrease in sickness for your baby. And so really the goal is, and what you're gonna hear, if you're GBS positive, your doctor or midwife may want you to go to the hospital a little bit earlier in order to not give birth within that 6-hour window. If you have had 2 doses of antibiotics, at least 4 hours, 6 hours, you are in the clear. The chance of your baby getting sick is so incredibly slim, no stress. And again, if you give birth in less time than that, or even less than 2 hours, or you give birth at home and whoops, I'm GBS positive, obviously there's nothing we can do about that, okay? I don't want you to stress. It doesn't mean your baby's getting sick, but it will mean that your baby will need to be monitored to make sure that they don't actually get sick during or after birth. Again, this means that you're not typically getting sick from this type of bacteria, right? It could cause an infection during labor if your water's been broken for a while and you haven't had treatment. But in general, the big thing we're concerned about is called neonatal sepsis. And that just means your baby has a widespread infection and can make them very, very sick. Now, what can we do? Because obviously most of you are thinking like, I don't want this. And it is more of a hassle. It does require an IV. It does require antibiotics. And I know various people feel different ways about getting antibiotics. It does wipe your flora, sets you up for yeast infections and other things, right? So ideally, we're not giving antibiotics unless we need them, but this is that one case where the risk benefit to your baby getting very, very sick is gonna be high. And so if you are positive, it's gonna be highly recommended that you get those antibiotics. Now, can you prevent it? The answer is not really. Okay, so you can't really prevent it, but I did find one study because one of the questions that people ask is, can I take probiotics to shift the natural flora in my body? Which is true. That's what probiotics, even prebiotics, are for. They can help us to boost our natural flora, those good bacteria in various places in our body. That's where yogurt is full of probiotics. But Martin et al. Actually did study this, and they found that there is one strain of probiotic, which is one strain of bacteria that can help decrease the chance of GBS, being GBS positive. And that is Lactobacillus salivarius probiotics, all right? So I'm gonna link down below. I will link you a few places that you can find this particular one. I know Seed does have one. There's various others, but you wanna look for not just any probiotic, but a Lactobacillus salivarius is the probiotic strain that you're looking for that does have some evidence. Otherwise, this is not something I want you to be stressing about, all right? This is normal, it's natural, you're not infected, you're not icky, all right? It is just something we want to know so that we can treat, and then it's one more sort of nuisance for your labor and birth, something to be aware of, and then we move on, you get treated, no big deal, no one's stressed about it, and we're good to go. So then how do they test you? I have various models here, all right? And this is my pelvic floor model, which is not what clearly you look like. This is an external genitalia model that I have as well, but it's also very firm. And so I did get another model. I brought out my more realistic model here, all right? So we are in the land of the classroom. Therefore, I wanna show you exactly what it's like. I tried it on the other ones, and this one is just gonna be the one that's gonna do it for us. So, how do they test you in your 35 to 37 week appointment? Some people go at 35, some at 37. You can ask your doctor. This is a very, very simple test. All right, but it is uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable internally, probably more than externally. But what they'll do is they will take a longer swab like this. So it's like a Q-tip. They're gonna take a Q-tip like this, and all they need to do is drag the Q-tip, go to the vagina, inside the vagina just a smidge, and then they drag it all the way to the rectum, inside the rectum, pop it in, and you're good to go. And the reason for that is that this particular bacteria is cultured in both of those places. And unfortunately, no matter how you feel about it, that the rectal bacteria typically can migrate towards the vagina. And so if it's present in the rectum, we need to know and still treat it, because throughout labor and birth, there's lots of juices. You maybe aren't wiping quite as well. There's sweat and other secretions down there that bacteria can kind of intermix, and they're correlated with one another. That if it's in your rectum, it's potentially in your vagina, and vice versa. So it's a quick test, in, drag, out, that quick, you're done. So then it goes off to the lab, and within about a week probably, you'll know whether or not you're GBS positive or GBS negative. I also want to mention that not everybody's genitalia looks like this. I feel very protective of this model, like I want to keep her covered. And then when we're ready, all they would do is they would remove the sheet, and then they may actually have to use their 2 fingers to spread the labia a little bit, so they're not kind of doing any of that. No one wants that. So you may have to be touched a little bit. Spread, in, drag, booty, and voila. I'm gonna move her out of the shot for the rest of this video so none of us are distracted. Moral of the story is that GBS is normal. It will be tested late in your pregnancy. You'll be positive or negative. If you're negative, no big deal. If you're positive, then they will treat you likely with penicillin. If you have an allergy to penicillin, make sure you let your nurses know that. They will give you another type of antibiotics. And when you are treated, it significantly decreases the chance of your baby getting sick in your labor and birth and once they're born. Thanks everyone for spending your time with me here today on my channel. If you want more from me, as always, check out the description box down below. There is my birth class that's available to you down there to know all of the things to prepare for, all of the steps along the way, how to navigate the hospital system. And then if you want my free visualization class, that's down there, my pregnancy checklist, which this one is gonna be on the pregnancy checklist to expect between 35 and 37 weeks. And then, as always, thank you so much for subscribing, liking, leave a comment down below. What did you take away? How is it for you? Share that with the community. And then until next time, don't forget to flex and flow, and I will see you very soon. Bye. It is a little pop in the booty, which you may be used to or not. And that helps keep the bacteria in the vagina. No, we want to keep them there. We do, but we don't. And that helps keep your vagina, what am I even trying to say? Oh my gosh. Oh God. I can't help myself. I don't want to be disrespectful, but it's just too smushy. I feel like I need to cover her. I might be demonetized for this one. But I'll show it. I can show a real boob. We'll move her out of the shot so she's not staring at anyone. I'm gonna move her out of the shot for the sake of everyone being distracted, including myself. No.